This is Terror House Radio with Matt Forney and Bryden Proctor.
Yeah, welcome to it, Terror House Radio episode number 61. I'm Matt Forney, your charming and loquacious host. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Terror House Press. My usual co-host and producer, Bryden Proctor, will not be joining us this episode. There is currently an active shooter at his place of work. He is currently hiding in a closet. Okay, that was a bit dark, but I apologize for that. But he couldn't make it, and we're doing 2 episodes this week. You get a bonus. We're working hard.
He's probably the active shooter.
Ding. But anyway, we're doing 2 shows this episode because I won't be available next week. I'm going into an isolation tank. I've decided I've had enough of this cruel, cruel world, and I'm driving up to Monterey. And I'm completely dropping off the face of the earth for a little bit. So see you guys. But my co-host for this program is Matthew Pegas. He is the author of Dragon Day. You can check out his Substack and other stuff in the Twitter. And we had him on last month, so most of you probably don't know who he is. How you doing, Matthew?
Doing good. Good to be back on.
Yes. And by the way, I'm Matt and he's Matthew for the purposes of the show. It's the Matt-Matthew distinction. It's like the friend-enemy distinction. But not as important. And our guest is the esteemed Andy Nowicki. He is the author of many great works of fiction, including The Columbine Pilgrim, Heart Killer, Under the Nile, and his very first new work of fiction, new novella in 7 years, The Insurrectionist, which will be out 1 week from today via Terror House Press. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. It's always good to be back, and I'm glad to have a different name from the two of you, from the other 2 of you, so as to be able to distinguish myself more readily. So that's
I've actually made that joke with Matt Lawrence, another our art director, and another Matt who's involved with the
hell of a lot of Matt, and your illustrator. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of Matts in your operation.
Be right back, changing our name to A Fistful of Matt's Press. But anyway, if you have any questions, you in the audience, for myself, Andy, or Matthew, or just comments, you can send them to streamlabs.com/terrorhouse magazine, and we will answer them later in the show. But let's just get right into it, Andy. What is the Insurrectionist? Just kind of give us the overview of what this novel is about. And it's and why people should go out and buy it, and buy 2 copies and 3 copies, and tell their friends and their enemies and people they're indifferent about.
Yes, absolutely. The Insurrectionist is something that I wrote in response, essentially, to 2020. I guess we all kind of, for better or for worse, the goings on of the previous year, and to a lesser extent the current year, left an indelible mark on the psyche of many of us, and myself certainly included. And I began seeing, the dystopic reality of things. I had been aware of them of those things for a while now, so it's not like this is the first time they ever came to my attention. But I think the previous year, and even into this year, all of the developments in the world amongst our would-be rulers and so forth really grabbed my attention in a way that I could not ignore, could not shake, and made me profoundly pissed off. And so the way to deal with that is, there are healthy and unhealthy ways to deal with anger. Anger is is sometimes a perfectly appropriate response to injustice. Well, it is always a perfectly appropriate response to injustice, but it can eat you alive, or make you do things you shouldn't do, or it can drive you to artistic perfection, which is what I would modestly call my new book, The Insurrectionist. It's the first thing, as you say, it's the first thing I've written the first longer work of fiction that I've written in 7 years. I have written a couple of shorter works lately, one of which is published at Terror House on the Terror House
Operation
website.
Triggerman.
Yes.
I'll post the link in the chat.
Thank you. Yes, Operation Triggerman, and I more recently wrote Death by Dream Girl, which is something I self-published, but I kind of hope to have a short story collection out sometime in the next year or so, if the fates allow. But the Insurrectionist was the first major work that I undertook. I mean, and it's the first time that I felt inspired to return to fiction. Really, since I don't know what the last fiction work that I did that I published. Maybe it was
I believe it was This Malignant Mirage.
Yeah, This Malignant Mirage, which was a work of a collection that I published in like 2015 or so. And
by
since
the way,
then,
we will be bringing This Malignant Mirage back into print. Terror House Press will, so look for that in the near future.
yes, and what I'm excited about with regard to the Insurrectionist is, I believe, I'm excited about. I mean, I'm all of my work excites me. Otherwise, I wouldn't write it. Otherwise, I wouldn't publish it. Seek to publish it. Otherwise, I wouldn't want others to read it. So I'm sort of cocky enough to think, well, that everything I've written is worth reading. But this new work, The Insurrectionist, I think really has a chance to reach a larger audience. I don't know whether it will succeed at doing that or not, and if it does not, I won't consider it a failure in any regard. But I have high hopes that given the current state of things, and given the fact that the masks are off, and that's a ironic metaphor to use, given the virus, the contrived virus crisis of the last year and a half. But I think more and more people are seeing what T.S. Eliot calls the skull behind the skin, the skull beneath the skin, when it comes to our ruling class and their ways. I think most people, shouldn't say most people, but a huge number of people, a large minority, are pretty much aware that the last presidential election was a joke, that it was, an embarrassment worthy of a banana republic, and I, everything else that's been going on, all the other, lies that have been broadcast to us daily, just have left their indelible mark upon me. And so the inspiration for the Insurrectionist was, well, what if the current state of things endures, and gets worse for like a few more years, let's say 5 years, 7 years down the line, and then on top of everything else, on top of all of the psychological operations that they've been running on us relentlessly, for the last year or so, last couple of years. What if they add unto that an alien invasion? And it just so happens that right now the powers that be, the so-called respectable media, and various authorities in the Pentagon and elsewhere are now promoting this idea suddenly. It's been this major reversal of things, because up until a few months ago, the respectable, quote unquote, respectable media and the quote unquote respectable representatives of the government and of the powers that be, and the corporate media and so forth, would never have given any oxygen to any story of aliens or UFOs. It was all just sort of seen as crazy stuff, out there, tinfoil hat kind of stuff. But over the last few months, maybe some people out there are aware of this. I don't know. It's probably slipped some people's attention, but I've been aware, very aware, that suddenly they're talking about it on places like 60 Minutes and CNN and Washington Post, New York Times. Suddenly they're saying, look, there's all these sightings of strange aircraft, or these crafts that were there's photographs and there's video footage of these crafts doing these incredible maneuvers that are way beyond anything that any human technology could explain. And so they're really promoting this idea of an alien threat, and this has really come to the forefront lately. And it just so happens that in my book, The Insurrectionist, there is an alleged, there is an event which is essentially an alien attack, or it's construed that way. There is an attack from somewhere, and it wipes out several major cities across the earth and kills around 1 billion people. So there's this huge catastrophe, and it's said to have originated from aliens that the people called Sky Devils, but the established authorities and the newly minted globalist government, they call them the overlords.
Nothing ominous about that.
Right. And so, I really found, and I know I was, for over the last couple of months, Matt, I'm talking to Matt right now, not Matthew. Matt, I was bugging you with emails where I was saying, look at this, look at that. I mean, there are all these places where this alien op is suddenly, since the virus op is kind of running out of steam right now, and it's maybe on to the next thing, and maybe the next thing is this alien op, and it seems so strange, it seems so surreal and so out there that they would promote this kind of thing, but it's actually not without precedent. And people who know about Operation Bluebeam, people who know that President Ronald Reagan gave a speech to the UN back in the 80s where he said something like, he wondered if, in the event of an alien invasion, if all the countries of the world would be able to unite and respond properly. There was the whole War of the Worlds thing, the H.G. Wells radio event back in the 30s, which, I think was designed. I mean, it's talked about now as being, just an incredible, rendering of a artistic, this radio play that seems so realistic that a bunch of, stupid bumpkins out there actually believed it. But I happen to think it was meant to be a psyop. It was meant to rattle people, meant to, sort of make people think in terms of, an alien threat. So there's lots of precedent for it. And so the question is, why would they be bringing it up now? What's going on? And I think it's a worthwhile question to ask. And it happens to be what happens, what takes place. It's the seminal event in my book that's set in the near future, that there's this apparent alien attack on several major cities across the world, and that's what sort of gets the ball rolling with the story and with the main character, the man who starts out as this downtrodden figure and becomes essentially a hero. I think this is the first time I know I'm being long-winded in my answer, but I should also add that this is like maybe the first time those who are familiar with my fiction, I usually operate from the perspective of the anti-hero, the sort of Dostoevskian underground man type. And I think this is the first time where I actually have a bona fide hero, where my main character is really, he starts out certainly in a troubled state of mind, but then through a certain series of events becomes a hero, so it's sort of strange, just the things that external events can have these kinds of influence on one's writing. I'm sure that Matthew, I'm talking to Matthew now, the other of my interlocutors here, as a fellow writer, can attest. Yes, so that's essentially, that's my long-winded answer to why I ended up writing The Insurrectionist, and why I'm really excited to be publishing it with Terror House Books.
Yeah. That's all fascinating. I've got some follow-up questions, obviously, but for the purposes of YouTube's terms of service, I have a prepared statement I must read. I wrote it down. That's how important this is. Terror House Press does not endorse conspiracy theories. We believe that Joseph R. Biden Jr. is the duly elected president of the United States, and that the election was free, fair, and transparent. The Terror House also respects science and does not countenance any statements to the contrary. End statement. And
Matt, going off that, I wanted to sort of add as maybe a caveat to that, or my own version of that statement. I was just going to say, when I was listening, I just finished The Insurrectionist last night, and in listening to Andy talk about it now, it really occurred to me that regardless of what one thinks about COVID and the election, and whether or not one thinks that there's conspiracy theories surrounding these things, the real phenomenon that kind of animates the story is that I think COVID is really the first truly global event, in the sense that when it happened, the powers that be could sort of monitor the global reaction in a way where you could almost look at it as a test run. Now, whether or not there's actually a grand design behind it, nevertheless, we can look at the past year and say that it's been an experiment in seeing how the world can react to a narrative, so to speak. Does that make sense? Yes,
makes sense to me.
Yeah, like regardless of the degree of conspiracy one may or may not think is there, it's this interesting global moment where it's like, okay, so if we tell everyone to do this, they'll do that, and then we tell them to do another thing, and how many people do it. Right. Regardless of if there's a grand design behind it, it's definitely an unprecedented level of sort of testing the waters, so to speak. And the question isn't, is that being used to nefarious end? It's more, could it be? Could it be used to nefarious end? The creation of a global narrative, and in your case, it's this, potential or ostensible alien invasion. Right. I was also interested in what you said about the H.G. Wells experiment, which, yes, is kind of presented as this famous prank, right, at a sort of artistic event. But, is it not useful to see? Might it not be useful for some powers that be to see that such a fake out could actually be used?
Right. It's definitely useful useful, quote unquote, in the sense of, even people like us who I can speak for myself anyway, who have no authority whatsoever, and I think I can speak for the two of you probably as well. No connection to any alphabet agencies or anybody, anything like that. But it's
speak for yourself. This entire transcript is being forwarded to the FBI as we speak. I'm kidding.
But in any case, it is definitely, if you just take a detached perspective on it, it is really interesting to see how people react, when they're presented with something, the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance, like, for example, i.e., this is a virus. If you believe that it's real, even the official sources will say this is not that. This is not a deadly virus. This is more. This is less virulent. This is less deadly than most seasonal flus. Nevertheless, we have to close down the world. We have to, make sure we have to close down businesses. We have to tell everybody to wear masks, even though we told them before that masks don't work against virus. The passing of a virus, because, or the wearing of cloth masks anyway, has no effect whatsoever. That it even said on the boxes, that they gave out that the boxes were not effective against COVID-19. But still, nevertheless, even though this is still a global pandemic that threatens everybody, and we're all going to die from it unless we do exactly what we're told. So it's like, on the one hand, even from the official sources, even if we cede to the CDC and whomever else, whatever else official source claims, even they admit this. If you read between the lines, this is not something that's going to take out the population, a huge swath of the population, but they still find reasons to generate fear and to more importantly, take away people's what I believe to be God-given freedoms, and promote this entire lockdown op, which I wrote a series of essays that I never actually ended up publishing as in print form, but I wrote there's something that I wrote under the name "The Lockdown is a PSYOP," which is you can find by typing in my name and typing in that words. And it was a series of essays that I published last year, just about all the internal contradictions and all of the things that were just that made absolutely no sense, and all of the ridiculousness of it, the zaniness of it, the farcical nature. It's something that could be called a farce, or could be called a travesty, and it's somewhere in the middle, really, because a lot of terrible things have happened because of it, because of the way this event has been responded to by the authorities, and the kind of things that have come out of it. And so I think that I should also add that my book, The Insurrectionist, is not super topical, in the sense that there's no talk of a virus, there's no talk of of Trump or Biden, there's no talk of pandemics, there's nothing that's like ripped from today's headlines, but it is set in a near future that is very recognizable based on where we've been heading over the last year and a half. So it's topical without being without being so topical as to be like
it's topical and timeless, basically. Like, someone in 10 years, like, when we're all living in capsule hotels and eating NutriPaste dispensed from dead bugs, and we've illegally downloaded this onto our jailbroken Kindle devices, it'll still be relevant and fresh and entertaining.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. That's definitely what I'm going for. And
it hits that sort of sci-fi mark of being, about obviously some sci-fi is much further in the future, but it's kind of a Soylent Green type of sci-fi where it's it's not so far in the future that you can't see the seeds of this speculative reality in the present.
Oh yeah, and I think that there are a lot of influences on it. Like, I think that, for better or for worse, They Live has become this really cultural touchstone, I'm a big fan of the movie They Live. I think it's a cheesily made film, but I think it's aware of being cheesy, but it also is an incredibly profound and really incredibly insightful movie, as just in ways that when I saw it in 1988, I thought I actually saw it in the theaters in 1988 when it was released, and at the time I thought, wow, that's really outrageous, that's really out there, this is really, and I was entertained, and I thought it was cool, and all of that, but it was so much more real, so much more reality was broadcast in that movie than I or many other people, I think, really suspected in the late 80s. Those of us who were old enough to remember when it was actually released. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned Soylent Green. I think that that's, movies like that, movies and books like that are definitely an influence. But They Live, and I'm trying to remember the shoot, I can't remember the name of it. The James Woods movie with
Videodrome.
Videodrome. That's also very much as far as like all these like They Live and Videodrome, they're and other movies like it. They all have this wonderful aspect of like both presenting you with this horrific kind of reality, as far as what's actually going on out there, what our psychopathic rulers are doing to us. But there's also this wonderful kind of catharsis that those movies give us, where we see, these powers defeated in some way, or at least a major blow being struck against them. And I think that's part of the appeal of They Live is again the way that it ends with Roddy Piper's character, sacrificing himself, but also really striking this blow and making it so that the enemy is now visible to everyone. And I think, it's like I said earlier, the masks are coming off, and we're seeing the reality of who these people more. I mean, I say we, and I shouldn't overstate it, because I don't mean to sound more optimistic than I am, but I think that to a large number of people, it's becoming more and more. The reality is becoming the terrible reality of who the enemy is becoming more inescapable to our
It's transparent, obvious.
Yeah, it's something that's basically impossible to ignore now. With all these about faces on everything. Just kind of going back to the whole premise of like an alien attack. I read. There's been tons of stories that you've pointed them out to me, Andy. The one that always sticks in my mind, I think it was back in December, that retired Israeli military official says that claimed that governments had already been in contact with aliens. Like that just comes out of nowhere, and it's like,
yeah,
cool. Thanks for telling us. Why are you telling us now?
Cool story, bro.
and who are these aliens? Where are they from? It's then there's the declassification on UFO stuff. There was did anyone ever get to the bottom of what was going on with those monoliths? You remember the story where all these same monoliths were just appearing in all these different places across the globe? They found one in California. There was one in Romania.
Oh yeah.
My cynical view is that it was just some kind of ARG marketing push for a movie or something, but I don't think there was an official explanation for what was going on there.
Yeah, no, I'd forgotten about that story, but but I'm vaguely remembering it now. There have been so many strange things like that are now being broadcast or being put out there, being seeded into our consciousness in one way or another. And a lot of it might just be for the purpose of, what Matthew was saying, this, just like, how will they react to this? How will they respond to this? Are they ready for this yet? What will
calibrating people?
Calibrating, like not only calibrating the people who are, who will, be good citizens and just do what they're told, but also maybe more importantly, calibrating the dissidents, like saying, okay, these people are quote unquote red-pilled. I don't like the familiar terminology, but just for our purposes, they're reacting this way or they're reacting that way, or some people are reacting to the alien stuff and saying, finally, we're getting disclosure on this stuff, and others are reacting to it and saying, no, this isn't, maybe I think aliens are real, maybe I don't, but I don't really buy this, what they're selling to us right now. But they're really, just like they were doing with the virus stuff and with the election stuff and with all the stuff about the events of January 6th, all of this sort of fear porn that they were saying, like, oh, these racist, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic Trump supporters are threatening to take over the country. We've got to do something about it, and
have you noticed, Andy, sorry to cut you off. Have you noticed that the government has basically brought back the same tactic that the Bush administration was doing like about 20 years ago? When the Bush administration was constantly issuing like, oh, there's a heightened risk of terrorist activity. They're doing the same thing now, but with domestic enemies. Yes,
that's right. The Trump supporters or whatever, however they render them, the quote unquote white supremacists, the whatever, the anti-government people, the conspiracy theorists, all of the dishonest, disingenuous ways that they choose to label, the dissidents within the West, within the United States and elsewhere. Yeah, we're like the new Osama bin Laden. We're the new radical Islamists.
They've thrown out some really ridiculous examples. Like there was the one, was it last month? Someone said that, we may see a heightened domestic terrorist activity now that people are free to not wear masks. It's like, yeah, because that's exactly what domestic terrorists and other criminals hate, right? A piece of cloth that obscures their identity.
It's been so topsy-turvy and so crazy. With the mask stuff, it's hard not to see all of that in a kind of esoteric way. Since we know that, if you've got a brain in your head, you know that these masks don't really change anything. They don't, even if you believe in the virus, they don't stop the virus from being passed from one person to another. And if they, even if we believe that the virus is true and real, then why wasn't there this kind of, this is the question I was asking ever since March of 2020. Why was there not this kind of response to the swine flu? Why was there not this kind of response to SARS? They didn't, those were acknowledged, quote unquote, global pandemics back in, the late aughts and the early, teens. But they didn't shut down the world and say that everything had to, and say, oh, well, now we're imposing that this is the new normal and, everything's changed, everything's different. You put two and two together and it just never, it never made sense. It never added up.
The new normal is definitely a buzzword you use a lot in the novel. And yes. My position on some of this, I may be more agnostic about it, or my position may not be as strong. But certainly, I think it's no great conspiracy theory to say that the media and the government and the alphabet organizations and however those things are united, right? They're used to controlling the narrative entirely, and that's been slipping steadily, especially since 2016. And I think that you could look at pretty much everything since 2016, but especially 2020, as this attempt to sort of recalibrate and see, and regain control of the narrative. And I wrote a blurb for your novel for Matt, to put on it, and what
it's actually going to be on the back cover. So to
great. Cool. What really stood out to me in the novel is kind of the way you reflect on the language used to craft the narrative, so to speak, with talk about the new normal, and the prime minister figure in the novel. What's her name? Something Smutzog or something?
Yeah, Smutz-Ague. Dr. Gresham Smuts-Ague is the new prime minister of the world.
What a great name! You hear that name, and you all of a sudden you hear a shrill white woman asking to speak to your manager.
Absolutely, that's the vibe. I'll actually ask in a second where if you have an inspiration for that specific hyphenated last name. But just to finish the thought, just in her speech especially. I heard something which you obviously garnered from real life, which is this language that sort of engenders, it engenders inaction and surrender and acceptance and ultimately despair.
Yeah.
And that really came through.
Well, thanks. Yeah. In the book, without giving too much away, we've got this alien invasion, but it's coupled with this rhetoric that's being promoted from on high, which is basically to say, you just have to sit back and take it. And, this is the new normal, and we have to just understand the overlords and sort of this whole, it became, it's like this rhetoric of demoralization. It became clear to me in 2020, based on, and I wasn't, I don't have my ear to the wall. I'm not a news junkie by any stretch. I try to avoid, the current news, and I've tried to stay out of it forever, but I couldn't. And it just became clear to me there was I think the point of canceling all of these events, canceling, making it so that you couldn't go anywhere, making it so that you had to lose your job and just sit at home and just
just satisfy yourself with Netflix and masturbation.
Yeah, and you couldn't see your friends, and you couldn't accept other than virtually, and they were passing this whole, and the strange thing is, I was hearing this stuff about, people aren't even leaving their houses. I never believed that was actually happening. I mean, I had left my house as much as any any other time, but they were promoting this idea of which I think at its bottom was just demoralization. That you had to just feel demoralized, you had to feel defeated, you had to feel like this was never going to end. This was just the new normal. And you were just at the will. Your fate was going to be determined by forces beyond your control, and that was just it. That was the message that was being broadcast, especially in the early months of the what I call the virus op, that's part of what I have, the message that's being broadcast by the powers that be, by the globalist stooges who have taken over in my dystopic world. It's the same, there's no reference to the virus. There's no reference to, the 2020, the extreme 2020 kind of stuff, or the election or anything like that. But there is still this sort of just rhetoric that's meant to engender demoralization and a feeling of helplessness, surrender.
Demoralization and confusion, which is something you actually, thematically go over in the novel. That the goal of a lot of these operations is just to leave people in a state of panic and confusion because you don't know what's going to happen next. It's like, alien invasion. What's going on now of like the constantly changing patchwork of regulations involving the virus. First it's masks, and it's like you can take the mask off, and it's like, you can get the vaccine and you can go to all these places and do these things. But wait, the vaccine doesn't protect you against being reinfected, so you still have to wear your mask. Stuff like that. Curfews and new lockdowns. And by the way, do you know where the term lockdown comes from? It comes from prisons.
Right.
A lockdown is what they do when the prisoners riot. They put the prison under a lockdown to keep the prisoners from acting out.
Exactly. It's prison terminology. You want to talk, do we live on a prison planet? Well, that's when you hear the term lockdown, that's low key telling you that we're living on a prison planet. At least, that's what our rulers want us to, how they want us to feel. So in the book, the ruler, Matthew asked the question how I got the name of Dr. Gretchen Smuts Ague. I think I was just trying to think of of course it would have to be, in this inverted world, it'd have to be ruled by a woman, and just some globalist bitch, like a Hillary Clinton / Angela Merkel, type of figure. But I guess that I don't know. I have problems with names in my fiction because I don't want to just name. I don't want to just have people named things that just sound like, his name or her name. So what? I want the names to have some. Yeah. If people are named, I want the names to have some kind of weight to them. I want them to be resonant. Not necessarily that they, mean something, like just in some, 2 + 2 = 4 kind of way, but I want them to have some resonance.
It just can't be random. I know exactly what you mean when I write too. Like, it's not like I need to have some special name for everyone, but like, there's got to be something, right?
It's like a Charles Dickens would name characters like Mr. Bumble and whatnot.
Yeah, Charles Dickens was great with names. He had some really outrageous, crazy sort of names. But yeah, he was really good at coming up with names that really conveyed something about the characters. And interestingly enough, I would say the same about George Lucas. I think that in the Star Wars universe, you have really great. Every character is named in a way that it doesn't seem corny, but it's like they communicate something. When you meet Luke Skywalker, this character's name is Luke Skywalker. You get that. He's got what kind of a person is a Skywalker? It's evocative. It puts ideas in your mind.
Jack London was good at that too. If you've ever read The Iron Heel, the hero there is called Ernest Everhard. But that's to decide anyway.
Yeah, no, and there are certain authors that are really good at it, and I just like for some, I don't like to. I like to have characters. If I can't think of an evocative name for them, I'd just rather them go unnamed, which can be I guess can be a problem sometimes. Maybe I go a little too far in that direction, but the names of the characters that the characters that actually have names in the Insurrectionist are the hero is named Alexander Pastiche, and I only that was a name I only came across. Like I thought this guy's got to have a name. We've got to call him something. He can't just be unnamed. And so that name eventually suggested itself to me. And then also the villain of the story also had to have a name, and that eventually suggested itself to me, with Gretchen Smuts Ague. I just thought everything there, the Gretchen was sort of suggested by the esteemed mayor of Michigan, who's one of the many villains of 2020, Gretchen Whitmer. And I also just thought the hyphenation had to be there. And ague is something that's suggestive of fever, of being not well. And so there was this kind of insidiousness to it that kind of suggested itself. And also the sort of love interest of the story, the girl who meets our hero and takes him from this desperate state and puts him back on track. Her name is Brittany. We never learn her last name, but it's sort of a suggestive or evocative in its own way. So yeah, I didn't know we'd get detoured into talking about names, but it's definitely I'm proud in particular of the villain's name in the story. And the villain, I'm not to give anything away, but the villain's the fate that the villain meets at the end of the story is also something. It's a cathartic moment that I'm happy about. I like the way that it turned out. So yeah.
Certainly, yeah. No,
it is an important aspect.
I think we just got on that just because it's certainly evocative.
It
Yes.
isn't. Well, these things are important. There is power in a name as well as power in not having a name. It's an artistic decision to give characters names or not. Like how in Under the Nihil, the main character doesn't have a name at all. That
Yes.
it's not mentioned in the text. And just to give a quick plug to a friend of mine, Calvin Westra, he's the author of Family Annihilator. Go buy it from Expat Press. That novel, which is really good, by the way, only has 7 named characters, which was intentional on the basis of keeping the story very tight and focused around these very specific characters. Didn't avoiding the blow. So the name thing, may seem far away, but it's actually a very important part of putting together a compelling story.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where it's something that kind of vexes me. I don't think I'm that creative when it comes to names. When I think of somebody's name, I just kind of think, oh well, John Smith or whatever, Ben Jones, or just something sort of common sounding. And then so to have a character, you kind of have to come up with again, a name that suits the character and is evocative. With the Columbine Pilgrim, just to talk about my own characters again, Tony Meander was really suggested to me because I actually knew somebody in elementary school named Tony Manders who shared certain characteristics of the main character, in that he had a problem with his bladder. He would urinate. This was a guy that I actually knew. He was a character who would pee on himself, like in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and
the clinical term for that is enuresis. But I'd throw that in.
Yeah, just like it would happen to him at school, and it was really kind of sad. He would get made fun of for it, and it was a sad kind of thing. Although at the time, I as a kid, I just sort of thought, man, I'm sure glad I'm not that kid. I didn't really have that kind of empathy for him that I look back on now and think about. So, but anyway, his name was very suggestive, and his name was, I knew him, and his name was Tony Manders, and then I thought, well, why don't I just take that name and just make it like retouch it a little, and that was what led to Tony Meander being the sort of anti-hero. Definitely not the hero, but the main character, the protagonist of the Columbine Pilgrim. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of move forward a bit. One question I did want to ask you, Andy, is that given the gap between the Insurrectionist and your writing and publication of the other major fiction works that you've done, how do you think your perspective, your writing, your style, etc., has kind of changed in that 7-year gap? Because this is something I should probably I'll apologize for you for now if I haven't already. But I remember I think it was in a review of This Malignant Mirage or something where I kind of criticized you for you wrote a lot of works that kind of revolved around the same subject, such as therapists having sex with their male clients and whatnot. But at the time, I didn't know. You mentioned this. I forget where you mentioned it. That your output in that period was like you were. I believe the phrasing you used was that it's like you were possessed by a muse, and you just had to get all this out. Which I didn't know. Yeah. So I mean, which makes a lot more sense. You put out a large number of short story collections and novellas in the span of about a 3-4 year period. But you've taken a break from writing, fiction up until relatively recently. How do you think your perspective, how do you think things have kind of changed in terms of how you approach fiction, how your topic matters obviously significantly different, though people who read The Insurrectionist will recognize some of the themes you've gone over in previous works.
Yeah. That's a good question, and I don't want to be I don't want to engage in self-examination in a boring kind of way, or in a way that's too I don't know, self-promoting or self-focused or whatever. But I would say that, like, in between I was incredible. There was a period of time that was from about 2010 until about roughly 2013, and maybe into 2014, just a touch. So there was a period of time there where I was really writing up a storm. I really felt inspired, and that was why I wrote the kind of fiction that I did back then. It was inspired by a muse of one kind or another. I make reference to muses. Sometimes muses can be people. Sometimes muses can be events or phenomena. Or, like, I think for a time, Columbine was definitely a muse. And I had, I was when I wrote the Columbine Pilgrim, during that period of time, I was in contact with other people who were fascinated by the event, and kept in touch with people on a message board who were into Columbine, who had interest in Columbine. And I think there's always a spectrum of people who are fascinated, and people who are obsessed, and people who maybe see themselves in the event in some way or other, and see them picture, there's there's a certain there can be an unhealthy fascination with events like Columbine, and that became part of the story, that it was about this character who was obsessed, and who it led him down a very dark road. But I had other muses during that period, and it was a time of real, it was a time of real flowering creativity for me. I'd be interested to know with Matthew, he was just published his first fiction. Maybe I'll turn that around on Matthew in a second after I finished answering it myself, because I'm interested to know.
Oh, I appreciate the question. It's actually there's an interesting synchronicity here.
Yeah, to turn the spotlight away from myself, just because I sometimes shy away from the spotlight. I'm not that comfortable talking about myself that much, but I guess that, just to finish answering your question, it was like something about the events of 2020 just forced a kind of response in me. And it's funny because I have a friend who's a musician, a very, somebody I think is one of the most creative people I know, extremely talented person. And he actually ended up writing an album, an EP. The name of the band is the Shut Ups, and he wrote something called I Was Made for These Times, which was sort of a reversal of the Beach Boys song I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. And it was his response to 2020 in an ironic kind of way. So I think there's maybe something about response to extreme events, response to stress, response to trauma that just demands some kind of artistic, if you're someone who fancies himself to be artistically minded, there, it kind of demands some kind of retaliation. Like I said, if you're not gonna fight back through your art, you're gonna maybe fight back in some other way, which might land you in jail. So you don't want to you want to fight back in a way that's positive. You want to fight back in a way that's inspirational, that hopefully will help others to see that they're not alone. I think that's one of the best things that I feel like, if in my time as a writer, if I can help people out there see that they're not alone, and be able to relate in some way to what I'm presenting, and that's a really great thing. And I think what inspired the Insurrectionist was just a response to all of the rage and all of the trauma and all of the everything that I've been feeling about what's been going on in the world, all of the anger that I felt about it. And I think what made me want to give it the name The Insurrectionist was just the way that so many people the ridiculous way that so many people responded to the events of January 6th by saying, "Oh, these Capitol marchers, they're just a bunch of insurrectionists." And it's like, the kind of people who are using insurrection and rebellion as if it were a bad thing, whereas over the they were the same kind of people who were saying, become ungovernable, after Trump got elected. And there's so much just rank hypocrisy. I just sort of thought, well, okay, I'll take I'll take the title of insurrectionist. I'll make the story about somebody who is an insurrectionist, but who is an insurrectionist for good against evil. So I guess that's my answer to your question. But Matthew, what's your take on it?
My take on you were asking in terms of inspiration for writing and how that changed over time. Yeah, well, this is neither here nor there, but the synchronicity, I guess, is that I actually started. And now I think I talked about this when I was on last month. I'm not necessarily proud of this because my book is only 150 pages long or so, but I was working on it on and off for 7 years, and actually those years were the beginning of 2014 to now having published. So that for whatever, I don't know, there's probably no greater meaning to this, but I was writing my first novel that whole period, I guess, between the Mirage book from 2014 and this. And in those 7 years, I think it's really interesting that you put this in terms of muses. I'm not an ancient Greek, but I feel I know something of muse. I feel like every artist has that. Every author, has their muse, whether they put it in those terms or not. And one of the things I remember writing I think I said the same quote in the last episode I was on as well, but one thing one useful thing I learned from one of my college writing professors was that every good work of fiction is in some way or another about obsession. And I tend to think there's at least some truth to that. Maybe there's exceptions, but I think that in my own experience, that you become obsessed with something, whether in a really negative sense, if it's an anxiety, or a positive sense, if it's something beautiful, or somewhere in between, if it's just an eccentric sort of fixation, like with Columbine, which no shame there. I mean, I have my own share of crimes that I'm obsessed with. I guess my generation is a little more Elliot Rodger, and I'm by Charles Manson as well. We all have our things, right? But it really is all about those muses that move you. And when I was writing my book, there was kind of two stages to it. I would say that initially, I had all sorts of young man's anxieties in college, and also my own sort of political reaction to the early stages of the sort of woke culture, or SJW, overused term, but you guys know what I mean.
Yes,
that was kind of the original place of inspiration. Were those muses, and then I sort of stepped away from the book for a few years, and then I got more interested in the online sphere through Robert Stark's podcast, mostly, as I've talked about, but really the entire dissident online sphere. And I would say the sphere itself sort of became the muse and what kind of tipped me over the edge to finish my book. So there's kind of two stages of it. And right now, having finished Dragon Day and published it, and I'm kind of just been working on essays more recently, but I'm sort of waiting for that next muse, because I do want to write another novel, or at least get some good short stories out there. And I'm kind of in an in-between phase right now. But basically, my take on it is that I agree. It's all about, what do you decide to write? What do you decide to publish? How does your voice as a writer influence? What changes that? It's all about muses. It's all about these things which are somewhat external to you, but which obsess you in some way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it might be different if I were ever in a situation where somebody said, I'll give you, sorry,
what the
if
hell?
I were ever in a,
It's the FBI.
it was a call. If I were ever in a situation where somebody said, I'll give you $25,000 to write a book about X, then I might find myself in a situation where I'm not inspired, but I will. But yeah, for 25,000, you're going to pay me to do it. Yeah, I'll do it. But I've never been in that situation. So, anytime I have ever written anything, it's been because I've been inspired to do it. And hopefully with the hope that after I finish writing it, that I will find someone to publish it, and that after it gets published, it will be a huge success and bring me untold, fame and fortune, which hasn't happened yet. But I think that absent, some kind of mercenary motivation, you kind of have to be inspired. Otherwise, there's nothing. Why do it? And so I find the same thing to be really the case.
Do you ever find that there's like almost, maybe this is a dumb way of putting it, but do you ever find that there's almost like an exorcism-esque level to it, where it's like, obviously there's a positive end to the inspiration, but then like there's also an element of it which obsesses you, and then when you write it, it's like out of your system. That's something that you relate to at all?
Andy, you there?
having issues.
Man. Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like Andy's having audio issues. But yeah, I was gonna make the joke that I years ago I joked that writing is kind of like it's kind of like orgasming. It's like you shoot it out, you get it out there, and then you can just kind of relax.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Andy's back.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
back. Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. I've had somebody calling me, and I've had somebody trying to text me, so I don't know if that disrupted things. But I definitely think it's some kind of process that it can be called analogy. It can be analogously used to describe things like what Matt was just describing. It can be there's definitely a feeling of needing to. I've had times where it was so urgent that I get finished with it. Like when I was writing the Columbine Pilgrim, I've said this before, I felt like I had to finish. I felt like it would be just tragic if I were to die before finishing writing this work. Now, when I wrote it, I was in good health as far as I knew, and I wasn't, I didn't have any real reason to think I was going to die. But I remember feeling that way. I remember feeling, I've got to finish this. I've got to finish this. And so, yeah, there's definitely sometimes it's more urgent. Sometimes it takes a little longer. But
absolutely, and that's such a gift. It's the only way I know how to describe it is like a gift from from God or the universe. However, I'll say God because this is a good wholesome show. And it's this gift of just feeling that you need to say something, you need to express something, and it's not that I actually thought that anyone. Well, obviously, I do hope to get as wide a readership as I can, and I hope to earn as much money as possible. No doubt about that. But it had really, when you're in that mindset about writing, I think that this isn't just some artistic integrity, virtue signaling. I think that for me at least, and I imagine for you and for a lot of other people that I've talked to, it's really not about how many people read it. You hope that people will be able to tap into the wavelength that kind of you have been bestowed in order to create something from nothing. You hope that's something you can share with people, but at the same time, it's like it's your mission. You feel like you're on a mission to get this out there. It's like how often in the modern world where we're so bereft of purpose most of the time do we actually have to feel that? And I'm so glad that I have felt it with artistic endeavors.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll just say to close out. I guess we're kind of winding down right now, but just to close out, I do think I do get the feeling that this work, The Insurrectionist, has a chance to reach a wide number of people, and I'm going to do whatever I can to see that people just hear about it. Just because there is such a large degree of discontent with the way things are right now. There's such a and I really think it speaks to this discontent in a sort of broad, a kind of large tent kind of way. Like you can be anything from an ardent white nationalist or something who wants to overthrow the system, to just a QAnon person. I never really believed in QAnon, but I believe, I definitely think that the people in power commit atrocious crimes. I just didn't think QAnon was for real. But to people who believe in that, to Trump supporters, to just, even to people who are classical liberals, or just people who see tyranny for what it is and see what, who might even call themselves leftist or on the left, but see the what's been happening right now, the kind of neoliberal fascist takeover that's been going on over the last couple of years, see it for what it is. I think, I hope anyway, that there's and I don't, not to sound self-serving, but I think that a lot of people will
I think it has a chance to reach a lot of people if that's what is in the cards, and that's what I'm going to try to I'm going to try to see to it that a lot of people hear about it.
Yep. Sing it from the rooftops. Spam it on social media. I'm going to go out and print out flyers and hand them out to people on the street, telling them about this great book, The Insurrectionist, and why they should go check it out. And they're going to look at the flyer and then look at me and they'll say sadly, "Lo siento, no habla inglés."
Because that's right. Because where you live, that's true. But if
yes.
you put it in Spanish, maybe there'd be more takers. Who knows?
That will be happening at some point. Terror House books in foreign languages. We're conquering the English-speaking market, and then we're going to bring great literature to all the people who don't speak English. And there's a lot of them, as I have found out.
Yes, indeed.
But yes, I think this is a good point to actually. Before we go, there is someone in the chat who had a question. Speaking of which, and if anyone has any last-minute questions for Andy, Matthew, or myself, streamlabs.com/terrorhouse magazine. We don't have any right now, but I'll give you a chance to get them in now if you have them.
Hello.
Hey, my thing cut out for a second. What was that?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't hear Matt.
Matt cut out. Huh.
Yeah.
We'll give him a second. I guess the technical issues always beguile these things.
Yeah. It happens.
Oh, now he's gone entirely.
No, but we're still here. That's strange.
Yeah, that is actually strange. We'll see for how long. I assume we'll come back in, but we can keep the chat going in the meantime, I guess, if you want. I definitely enjoyed The Insurrectionist.
Man, my internet.
I was about to head out myself.
Well,
back. Okay, good.
We'll wrap it up quickly. My internet went out, so sorry, guys. But it looks like the stream is still on, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know how. I had an opportunity there to just go off on a monologue. I didn't take it up. Oh, well.
Yeah. But anyway, The Insurrectionist will be out next Friday, July 2nd. 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
Insurrection weekend.
That's
That
right.
is very metaphor. An insurrection of the mind. Okay, to fully respect YouTube terms of service here. It will be over from Terror House Press, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all other kinds of places. Andy, is there anything else you want to plug quickly before we go?
No, I did I miss? Was there some question that you had for me that I
Oh,
missed?
right. Yeah, we should probably answer that quickly. That's where I got cut off. This is from Maroon below in the chat. Wondering if Andy thinks the Ron Jeremy Hyatt indictments are a possible politicized response to the Ed Buck indictment, which Trump seems to have overseen directly. Probably not related to the topic, but they both have connections. It seems, but it's through association with Roy Cohn, Process Church. Roy Cohn was connected to Jeremy via the mob and Holmes. The 80s porn star was a regular companion of Roy Cohn. Before the Wonderland Avenue murders, it's a Laurel Canyon connection. I will know Mr. Nowicki seems interested in it. So that was his comment/question.
It's quite a rabbit hole, but interesting.
Are you there, Andy? I think
I don't think the powers that be are going to let him answer that one.
Yeah. Well, I want to point out something here as well. I tried to tether my phone when my internet connection stopped working, but then my phone connection stopped working at the exact same time, which is kind of odd. I think we should just end it here with all these technical. But yeah, The Insurrectionist, like I said, will be out on Friday. You can also, in the meanwhile, you can avail yourself of Andy's other books at Terror House Press. You can also visit his website, altrightnovelist.com, his blog, the link is in the description, his YouTube channel, his Instagram, all of that is there. Matthew, is there anything you want to plug?
Well, I want to plug my book, Dragon Day, of course, which is available now from terrorhousepress.com. It's a great book. You can get a physical copy, get a Kindle copy, whatever strikes your fancy. And I'm going to be doing more publicity for that book coming up. So follow me on Twitter as well, mpeg696 at Twitter.
Yes, I also have a link to your Substack. And also he is, Matthew co-hosts the Stark Truth of Robert Stark. Go check that out as well. And of course, you can find my works at everything I do at mattforney.com. But anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Terror House Radio. You can check in every day at Terror House Magazine, terrorhousemag.com. New poems, short stories, content every day. Our books, Terror House Press at terrorhousepress.com. Social media linked in the description. And of course, you can always find the latest episodes of Terror House Radio by going to terrorhouseradio.com. Terror House Radio is produced by Brian Proctor and presented by Katya Degg. Intro music by Zero Pulse. Illegitimate non-carborundum. Don't the bastards grind you down. I'm Matt Forney with Matthew Pegas and Andy Nowicki, and we are out.